The teacher is teaching the golden rule. American history and practical math.
Okay, I thought we were supposed to be playing Back to School or whatever it is. Up in the morning and back to school. We got new music today. Anyway, we're back. We're live. We're interactive. We're talking to you about your money. More importantly, about your money and how to keep it. How to keep it is most important, and we don't do a very good job of that. We go to school for a great portion of our lives to learn how to earn money, but in school they don't teach us how to keep it. In fact, if you take 100 people who started equal today at the age of 25, by the time they end up at 65, 1 is wealthy, 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the rest of the people, 54, might just as well be dead because they're dead broke, dependent on family and state. Now, do you really want to end up there? Because I think the reason that happens is called lack of a plan. I have identified 13 major reasons why people fail financially, but you can generalize and break those down or categorize them under 3 main categories called lack of knowledge, limited vision, and entrenched habits. I think those are the 3 major reasons why people fail financially. Subdivide them into 13 others, and one of the 13 is paying too much for the wrong kind of life insurance, paying too much for unsuitable life insurance. Joining me today is Anthony Windier. He's a specialist in life insurance, knows more about life insurance than anybody that I know. And he is the fellow that I turn to when I need more information about life insurance. When you talk to me, you're talking to a general practitioner. When you're talking to Anthony, you're talking to a specialist. So if you have big questions regarding your life insurance, any doubts about the life insurance that you currently have, Anthony is the guy to consult. And everybody needs to review their investment program. They need to review their financial plan. And more importantly, they have to review their life insurance program on a continuous basis because things change. Life insurance is closely tied to estate planning, and today we're going to focus on what I like to call the anatomy of a written financial plan. The anatomy of a written financial plan. If I say to someone, do you have a financial plan? They kind of look at me with glassy eyes and say, duh. What's that mean? And I bet you that there are lots of people listening to this show right now that haven't got a clue what a written financial plan is. They don't have one. They may have one and they don't understand it. They may have one and they have doubts about it. And we are offering, at absolutely no cost or obligation, a complimentary written financial plan, pro bono. So you want to get yourself a written financial plan, you don't have one? All you have to do, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, is make a phone call. I'm going to give the numbers out right now. Area code 604-280-0650. That's a live call. And we won't embarrass you if you call up. Give us a call. We want to have conversations with you, our listeners. If you're calling long distance, it's 1-877-280-0650. Now, you can log on. It's www.cil650.com. And some people are shy. They say, I'd love to call the show, but I'm just too shy. If you want to get that complimentary written financial plan, you want to get a second opinion on your investment portfolio as well, all you have to do is call Frida. She's down at the office right now for your convenience, and you can reach Frida right now at area code 604-737-3512. And if you're calling long distance, it's 1-800-661-1495. So you've been here before. You're back. Welcome back, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Now, introduce yourself.
Well, Fred, as you were mentioning earlier, we're both certified financial planners. However, you focus on the overall financial plan, where my keen focus is to focus on planning for business owners, professionals, and high net worth individuals, specifically with an eye to estate planning and insurance work and offsetting taxes.
That ties into estate plan and succession planning.
Absolutely.
You have a small business, you're listening to this show, and you're saying, well, how can I pass my small business on to my children? I talk to thousands of people. Right now I'm talking to thousands of people. You're out there, you're listening to the show, and I tell you that many of these people have businesses, small businesses. Many of these people are rich. Many of these people are poor. Many of these people are working. Many of these people aren't. Some of them are retired. Some of them are near retirement. And some of them have a long way to go before they want to retire. And some of them never want to retire. They just want to be financially independent. So there's a wide range of people that we talk to. And one of the major reasons why people fail financially, once again, is paying too much for the wrong kind of life insurance. I want to focus today. I want to provide some focus. I want to talk about universal life, permanent insurance. Fair ball?
We can talk about universal life. That's a type of permanent insurance.
Yes. What is a universal life policy?
Well, a universal life policy actually can be many, many things. It's like saying a car. A car can be a Hyundai, it can be a Cadillac, it can be a Maserati.
Chev, Pontiac, whatever.
Absolutely. So there's many, many different types of universal life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, give us an example.
Well, there is universal life where the cost of insurance is level. So we're talking it's like a term to 100 product. And there's a side account whereby you can have tax-deferred savings in the side account. And it can be a permanent deferral because upon death, both the death benefit and the side account are paid out tax-free.
So a universal life policy is a term insurance policy with a cash surrender value attached to it or an investment product attached to it, like a sidecar.
It can be.
Okay, well, you say it can be. Are
Because
there some that
there
aren't?
are some that are not. And what is so important about universal life products, and that's why I want to make the point, it's like a car. There's many different types of cars. There's good cars. There's cars that aren't so good. And when we're talking about universal life, it's an unbundled product. There's all kinds of choices and different types of insurance costs, different types of side accounts. And it really is so important that if you have a universal life product, because it is an unbundled product, there's all of these choices and potential different costs of insurance. Bottom line is you have to see a professional so it's explained to you what you own.
What in the world does unbundled mean?
Unbundled means there are two types of permanent plans. You have what's called whole life, which is a bundled product. It's all a set and forget product. So everything is done for you. Whereby a universal life product, there's all kinds of choices. You choose the investment, you choose the type of insurance, and you have to revisit those choices because periodically you're going to have to make changes in the plan to reflect the current circumstances.
So one of them requires passive management, the other requires active management.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you got a product requiring active management, a universal life policy. So that I can kind of simplify that in the minds of our listeners, you have a policy that has a death benefit. Let's suppose you buy this policy, and the policy says that if you pass away, we will provide your beneficiaries with $1 million. We'll send a check to your beneficiaries for $1 million, okay? And that $1 million check that they get is income tax-free, right? No tax on it.
That's correct.
Now, if I want, or if I elect to, I can add additional money over and above the required premium. In other words, there's a minimum premium that you have to pay to prevent the policy from lapsing. So I pay the minimum premium. Heaven only knows what it is. I guess it depends on your age, your health, and all kinds of other things.
Amount, absolutely.
But there's a minimum premium. But I can pay extra. And the extra premium I pay goes into an investment which is attached to the policy.
Correct.
And as long as that investment remains under a acronym called MTAR, it's tax-free. It accumulates tax-free.
That's correct.
So let's suppose that I buy such a policy, and I decide let's say that the death benefit is $1 million, and I don't know if you can add $1 million to $1 million policy, but let's just suppose you can. So I write an additional check for $1 million and say, put this into the side fund. So that $1 million is liquid money. I can separate that from the insurance policy and withdraw it almost any time I want.
With some caveats.
Generally speaking, yes.
There are some caveats, but
Okay.
generally, yes.
Now, there's a concept out there called LITS, Life Insurance Tax Shelter. Okay? And basically what you do, you add that money to the side fund, and you can borrow that money back using the insurance policy as collateral, spend the proceeds of the loan as if it was income, and it's tax-free because it's borrowed money. That's
correct. Another name for that strategy is just a leveraged income strategy from a life insurance policy.
Let's for our purposes just call it LITS right now, though. Okay, so we have this LITS, and we borrow the money back, and we spend that money to pay our living expenses over a period of time. And then you say, yeah, but what about the loan? How does the loan get paid off? Well, the insurance policy itself is collateral at the bank. And when you pass away, there's a check paid by the insurance company to the bank, which is holding the policy as collateral. That pays the loan off.
That's correct.
Now, is this too good to be true?
No, not at all. However, they are long-term strategies. And one point I want to make, just because we're focusing in on universal life, and the two predominant types of insurance are universal life and whole life, and they're actually the exact same product, just one is bundled and one is unbundled. And if somebody has a universal life policy, they do have to review it every year or two to make sure that it's accomplishing their goals. So it's an active ownership, if you will, is going to produce the results you want. Whereby if you're not going to be active, you should have something that is a set and forget product. Both of them, though, can accomplish the leveraged income strategy and do so in a way that if you compare it to having invested the money in a traditional investment yielding 5%, that's usually what we use as an example, you would actually be way better off over time, over long periods of time, 20, 30 years, with the insurance plan because of the tax-free compounding in the policy. Very, very attractive.
You know, it makes me sad, upsets me somewhat. When I have elderly people in their early retirement years or later in their retirement years that need life insurance, and they'd buy all the life insurance that you could sell them, but they can't get it. It's either too expensive or they have medical problems which make them uninsurable. And you used the concept on our last show that I really like. Has something to do with buying it before you need it in case you need it later or worse to that effect. So summarize that for me.
Well, the irony of this type of planning, if you will, when we're talking about the holistic approach of financial planning, and both of us are looking at clients in the same way, being certified financial planners, we're looking at how do we help you accomplish your overall goals. And we're looking not only now, of course, we're looking way down the line. And the irony of this type of retirement and estate planning is that you can only get it when you don't need it.
Okay. Hang on to that thought. Let's take a call. Let's talk to Jeff from Coquitlam. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Hello, how you doing today, Fred?
Pretty good, Jeff. How are you?
Caught any fish lately?
I was out yesterday and darn near drowned.
Yeah, well,
it was so wet out there. It was unbelievable.
Why don't you stay home when it's windy?
Huh?
Why don't you stay home when it's windy?
I was too stupid, Jeff.
Run into a guy out at Ladner, and he'd caught a 40-pounder and a 23-pounder.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one, he said a seal came and took it away from him.
Well, those seals are wicked. I'll tell you what you do when a seal grabs your fish, you chase it, and you beat the water with your oar. Apparently, it works.
Really?
Yeah, that's what a guy was telling me. I have a friend who's a guide. I'll give him a commercial right now. His name is Dave Korsh, and for anybody listening to the show, the Big Springs are at Sandheads right now. That's the south arm of the Fraser. Okay, and I understand that he got a 38-pounder there a couple days ago and a 36-pounder. And I never heard of anything like this, but that's fishing like in 20 feet of water, dragging the downrigger ball in the mud.
Yeah. I think I mentioned to you this before, but I came down the South Arm one day and then went across the Sandheads.
Yeah.
And it's the mountains down there. I couldn't believe it. The depth sounder was going from 20 feet to 250 feet and back up again.
Yeah, I know. It's way the bottom is, but it's all mud.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if you get your downrigger ball down there, you can drag it without too much fear of getting snagged.
Anyway, a question for Anthony.
Sure, shoot.
Years ago, I bought some life insurance, whole life, and it was a vanishing premium policy. Do you ever hear about that, Anthony?
Well, there are two types of plans when we're talking about premiums. There are contractual guarantees, and then there was the vanishing, quote-unquote, vanishing premiums were based on returns.
Yes.
And the reality is unfortunately, the returns they were basing on did not happen, and it was a bit of a scandal. However...
No kidding. I had to go to court.
Absolutely. But when we're talking about these plans, if somebody has, and this is very important in the planning context, if somebody says, I want to stop paying at a certain point, they should always have a contractual guarantee that that will be the case and not use a reference rate.
Well, no, I had that, and we ended up going to court. I won't mention the company, of course. And at the court, they determined, they had I had to sign a retainer with a lawyer to get this class action suit going.
Right.
Okay, so to make it long and short of it is that they brought in an arbitrator. I thought the whole thing was a farce anyway, because the insurance company, even though I signed a $2 million retainer for this lawyer, I didn't pay it. The insurance company paid it. The insurance company paid for the arbitrator, the whole 9 yards. So mine was supposed to end when I was 60 years old. And this was prior to that happening, of course. And the judge ruled with the arbitrator, and the arbitrator, in my particular case, I was going to have to keep paying this premium till I was 90. And I said I'd be dead by then, so it wouldn't make any difference. Anyway, a month passes after this, and I was trying to debate who to sue, or whether the lawyer should be sued or somebody. And the insurance company sent me a letter saying, okay, we're going to add 2 years to your vanishing premium date, and then you won't have to pay the premiums after that, and you will have the full policy. And they did that, so that's fine, and they sent me the stuff. They were a little dishonest there, too, because I had a rider with that policy that if something happened to me, and I couldn't pay the premiums, that the premiums would be paid. Well, when the vanishing premium date came, the original one, the one that the insurance company, determined, they canceled the rider. So I thought that was dishonest, because if they were going to make me pay another 2 years, they should have had the rider extend 2 years also. You know what I'm saying, Anthony?
Well, I understand what you're saying. Not having been there, I can't comment on the situation, of course.
No.
However, the one thing I can say, and to me is the moral of the story, and in planning we implement this, is if somebody wants to have a guaranteed date to stop a policy, it has to be contractual. It can't be linked.
I've got the contract. I signed it. I paid. I never missed a payment.
But they based that on the fact that there was an assumed rate of return, and that's the variable that didn't happen.
Yeah, but it did, because I've still got the insurance.
I know, but
it's full. And the question I wanted,
you still have to pay for it. You see, in order to vanish the premium, Jeff, it assumes that, I don't know, I'm picking a number out of the air, but let's say they make the assumption that there'll be enough cash surrender value in the policy where the rate of return on that cash surrender value will be adequate to pay the premium. Now, if they're assuming a rate of return or a discount rate, whatever you want to call it, of 4 or 5 or 6% in order to do that, and the return is really only 2, then the premium isn't vanished in the prescribed time frame.
Well, it is according to their contract when they gave me the vanishing premium date.
There was a multitude of lawsuits going back a few years when interest rates crashed. Prudential, I think, was one of the biggest victims of that.
The question I have for Anthony, what do you think the chances are? I mean, obviously this company is dishonest. When the original salesman that sold it to me went on to something else. So
maybe it was the salesman that was dishonest.
This fellow phones, he says, I'm your new representative for this policy, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
Very nonchalantly, Anthony, very nonchalant, he says, oh, by the way, we are not going to honor the vanishing premium date. And I said, you want to bet? And that's where we went to court. So over that and the canceling of the rider, I think they're quite dishonest. They've shown us their dishonesty because we had to go to court to do it, I would like to know what are the chances of me going to court to get that money that is owed to me, that is my insurance policy that I'm giving to my grandchildren, out of their grasp so that my grandchildren don't have to hire a lawyer to get this. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying,
okay.
And I feel bad that you had that experience. It's obviously a legal question. Unfortunately, I can't answer.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you can prove your case, I guess that's where it's all at.
Yeah. That's what it is.
I can tell you this, is when doing planning, what happened, unfortunately, at that point, is there was those assumptions made and not clear understanding of how the products worked. And the best way to address this is always to have, if somebody wants a premium to end at a certain point, is to have it contractually that it ends. Like it's part of the contract, not an assumed rate of return as Fred was alluding to.
Anthony, I've got every piece of paper that this company ever sent me from day one. After this court appearance, the first one, the original salesman, Brian, phoned me and just didn't say, "Hi, Jeff, how are you? This is Brian." Just started yelling at me, calling me all kinds of profanities. "What'd you do that for?" You know, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
When I finally got him to calm down, and I said, "What's the problem, Brian?" "Well," he said, why'd you take it to court?" And I said, "What did you sell me? What did you sell me?" And he said, "Well, I sold you the vanishing premium policy."
Right.
I said, "Okay," and I paid for it, and I never missed a payment. So why are you getting upset? I said, "What's the scoop behind it?" "Well," he says, "years ago they trained us. They gave us a seminar, and they did a study." And this is his story.
Right.
And he said, "We studied it, and we found out that truck drivers, which I am,
Right.
didn't keep paying their policies. So that's why they invented this vanishing premium thing as a good sales ploy to get us involved."
Well, you know, let me say something here. I pay $3,000 a month for my life insurance. That's the cost of my life insurance.
Fred, you got to be kidding.
No, that's exactly what I pay for life insurance, and that is for tax purposes. All right. Now, if I retired tomorrow, that $3,000 a month has to come out of my pension one way or another to pay it.
Exactly.
So therefore, it would be wise for me to have a life insurance policy that the premium ends when I retire. Okay.
Yeah, but shouldn't you've just turned 80 a short time ago, Fred.
Well, you shouldn't be telling my listeners how old I am. You just dated me, you son of a gun.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think I was down in your office on your birth date, as a matter of fact.
I'm proud of my age.
I know you are, and that's fine, but I thought insurance canceled. I thought they wouldn't give you insurance after 80.
Oh, I didn't buy it when I was 80. I bought it when I was 60.
And because you now turned 80, that's why your premiums are $3,000 a month.
No, the premiums have always been, it's termed to 100 and level premium, $3,000 a month until I'm 100.
Huh?
But it's not tax deductible, so I really have to earn I have to have a gross income of $72,000 just to pay for the life insurance.
Okay.
So that's why people should buy policies that they don't have to pay after they retire.
Oh, well, that's what I did.
I know.
And that's when this salesman came in.
I frankly believe that there was a misunderstanding here. I don't think that they would deliberately defraud you. I don't believe that. They could,
well, they
I suppose.
They sure tried with all the other people that were in that courtroom, Fred.
Well, there was a ton of lawsuits over that particular issue, but the insurance company may have honestly believed that those interest rates of the time were sustainable. I remember in 1981, interest rates were close to 20%.
But, Fred, you're missing the point. That's not my problem. They offered me a product.
Mm-hmm.
I accepted their offer, and I paid for it.
But if the wording of the insurance policy that you had was such that it didn't assume a rate of return of 4 or 5 or 6%, that the rate of return would be that, or it clearly stated once you turn whatever age, 65 or 70 or whatever the age was,
60, the premiums
you no longer have to pay the premium. If it clearly stated that with no conditions, that's
exactly
a contract.
what it stated.
That's a contract then.
That's right.
And you wouldn't have to go to court because it's clearly a contract.
Well, yeah, I know. They're going to pay when I die.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have the dishonesty to call me out of the blue and say, "Oh, by the way, we're not going to honor that contract,"
Mm-hmm.
then why, after I'm dead, wouldn't they say to my beneficiaries, "Oh, by the way, we're not going to pay you because we don't feel like it"?
Jeffrey, you have a legal case. It's not up to us to debate that to any great length on this show. This show is not designed for debating legal issues like that. But you're not alone. I can simply say and wind it up on that there were hundreds of people in the same boat, if not thousands, across North America.
And most of the insurance companies did offer this vanishing premium years ago.
It's a feature. It's a feature of all life insurance policies.
Yeah.
You can buy a 20-pay life policy, which means the policy is good for life, but you only pay for 20 years. You can buy a life paid up at 65 policy, which means that at age 65, the policy is paid up. You don't have to make any more premiums.
Yeah, no, my policy is paid up. It has been for a long time. So.
Yeah. And getting back to the reason that works is because you can have this side fund that we've been talking about.
Yeah, okay.
It's the cash surrender value part of the policy. Is the investment which is attached to the policy, which pays for the insurance coverage. That's a cost.
Yeah. Oh no, that all was brought up in court when we were there the first time.
So are you catching any fish, Jeff?
No, I gave up fishing. I told you how I catch fish. I stand on the other side of the butcher's counter, and after he wraps it all up, I say, throw that over the counter, and I catch it. Then when I'm serving it to all my family, I say, I caught this morning.
Jeff, enjoy the rest of the weekend.
And you too, Fred.
Appreciate the call. You take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, Jeff's line is now open. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also a registered financial planner. So I'm talking with Anthony Windier, who is also a certified financial planner. He's got about 12 designations after his name. I only have 2. I'm also a registered financial planner. You have that designation as well?
I do not. Although it's
I got one
very,
that he doesn't have. How about that? He's got more, but I got one that he doesn't have. Wow. And I think it's important to understand that designations, I don't know that it really matters how many you have. I guess it does in a way. If you have a lot of designations, it proves that you're a student of the business because you've had to take a lot of courses to get there. There's a lot of knowledge in terms of taking those courses, and it's not cheap. It costs money too. So that proves commitment to the business. And I know that he knows what he's talking about. So 604-280-0650 is the number to call. And long distance is 1-877-280-0650. And if you have a computer or you're in the library, you can log on. It's www.cil650.com. Frida's down at the office for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air. You want to make an appointment to see myself. You want a second opinion on your investment portfolio. A second opinion in writing on your investment portfolio. If you want to validate your portfolio to make sure you have the right portfolio of securities, the right investments, you want to make sure of that. This is your chance. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Just call Frida. You want a complimentary written financial plan? Just call Frida. And we promised to you that we were going to talk about the anatomy of a financial plan. I'm going to start doing that. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to finish that one up by the time we get to the break, but I'm going to start talking about the anatomy of a financial plan. And when we come back after the break, we'll continue talking about it. So what does a financial plan look like? Well, first off, a financial plan is a document. It's in writing. A financial plan is a document that says, it's like a blueprint. It says, this is where I stand today. These are my objectives. They're in writing. This is where I want to go, and this is how I'm going to get there. Now, to refine that a little further, to drill down into it, where you stand today is what are your assets? What are your liabilities? That's what you owe. What's your income? How much money's coming in? And what are my expenses? That's how much money is going out. Money going out is like your budget. This is how I spend my money. This is where the money comes from. That's your income. Assets is what I've accumulated so far. And liabilities is what I owe so far. And I might owe nothing and I might owe a ton of money. Okay? So that's a balance sheet. And the difference between assets and liabilities is called net worth. And the difference between income and expenses is called discretionary income. Okay? So you need to know that. And then you need a list of your goals, your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions boiled down into very, very specific, meaningful goals. Like I want to have a 40-foot yacht. I want a place at Whistler. I want a place in Arizona, and I want a 40,000 square foot house on the ocean at Horseshoe Bay or whatever it might be. That's my objectives. They're all laid out. And I know from talking to people every single day that most people listening to this program right now have not established crystal clear goals. And I think you would agree with me on that one, Anthony.
Oh, most definitely.
Now, you're a member of the Financial Planning Standards Council, right?
Absolutely.
So that's part of the regulatory people that regulate financial planning. Okay? That's pretty noteworthy.
Thank
Are you
Fred.
elected to that position?
No. I'm actually on their media relations team.
Yeah.
However, the Financial Planning Standards Council, the actual council itself, are composed of members from all the various parts of the financial services industry. And they regulate the designation because planning, unfortunately, is not overall across Canada a regulated occupation. So you always want to look for professionals such as yourself and myself who have the CFP, the Certified Financial Planning designation, which is the gold standard.
Okay. When we come back after the break, we're going to break that down even further. We're going to really talk about the anatomy of a financial plan. Don't go away. So you got to start thinking about how you're spending your money.
Fred Snyder.
If you can reduce the amount of tax you pay, that means that you get a tax refund. So you get a tax refund means you've really overpaid your taxes. And if you overpay your taxes, what you've really done is loan money to the government. So rule number 1 of my 46 ways to ease the tax bite is don't lend your money to the government.
Fred Snyder.
So pay your taxes. We're not talking about not paying your taxes. We're talking about legal ways to reduce the taxes you pay, not avoid them, to reduce the taxes you pay so that you can have more money to save and invest so that you can achieve your financial goals sooner. And if you're already there, stay there longer, because once you get there, it's your obligation to stay there.
Fred Snyder.
If you have a financial plan and you're somewhere in the middle and you're wondering what tweaks that you should make in that plan to make it what you really want it to be, time to make a phone call. Or if maybe you're just getting started out and you want to get a starter plan, maybe it's time to talk to somebody like myself and get yourself on the right track.
Fred Snyder.
I think that everybody needs to go and make an appointment to see Fred.
Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy.
CIL 650.
This is It's Your Money on CIL 650. Here once again is Fred Snyder.
Okay, we're back talking about your money and how to keep it. And now we're going to talk about the anatomy of a financial plan. Okay? So what is the first step in the financial planning process? Let's break it down into steps. I have 10 steps. So what do you think step 1 is?
Well, just to keep it very broad and a little less technical, I always like to say there's 2 sets of facts that we need when we're constructing a financial plan. They're soft facts and hard facts. So when we're talking about hard facts, they're exactly what you were alluding to before. What is your net worth? What is your income?
Sure.
How do you spend your money? Is there a surplus to invest? So all of the pertinent details, the hard facts of your financial situation. And then there's the soft facts. What are your dreams? What are your goals? Where do you want to be?
That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's important to you? How do you view risk? How do you view financial security, right? So there's all of these various soft facts that you have to incorporate into the hard facts when projecting forward and looking at potential solutions.
The Investors Group breaks it down into 3. They say lack of knowledge, limited vision, entrenched habits. So you're alluding to limited vision, no goals. So when we talk about step 1 in the financial planning process, we're talking about what are your goals. I've added a step in front of that, and I call that education. I think before you start the process, you need education.
I totally agree.
Where do you learn about financial planning? Listen to this show every week, and I guarantee you'll learn something. Attend seminars and workshops, you'll learn something. Read books. Okay? Get yourself a computer. Get on the internet. If you can't afford a computer, spend a lot of time in the library. Okay? You can Google just about anything. Source of infinite knowledge is good. I listened to an interview this morning. I wish I could remember her name, but she's the CEO of IBM, talking about artificial intelligence now, because that's where we're going. And the fact that there's millions of bits of information out there right now that are available. They're talking about medicine by way of artificial intelligence, finding a cure for cancer and all that kind of stuff. The internet is unbelievable source of information. So maybe step 1 is learning more, or I could just call it information. That's important. And then you set the goals. Because now your goals are going to be more meaningful because you have input into those goals. So that's step 2. You've established goals. So what's step 3? What do you think step 3 is? The way I interpret it.
Well, definitely step 3 would be commit it to paper and then find out what your possible alternatives are.
Okay, so written plans and deadlines, or
Absolutely.
whatever you want to call that.
Different scenario building.
Step 3 is like, where do I stand right now? That's the hard facts that you were talking about.
The status quo.
Assets, liabilities, income, expenses.
If you continue doing what you're doing, what will it look like?
Yeah, okay. And step 4, I like to say, is debt reduction. Turn all your bad debt, if you have bad debt, turn it into good debt, or get rid of debt altogether. How do you vanish your debt, like vanishing the premium, like Jeff was talking about earlier, okay? How do you vanish your debt? How do you snap your fingers and it's gone? One good way would be to assess strategies and methods and whatever you want to call it to make your mortgage tax deductible, or to make all interest expense that you're currently paying tax deductible. If you got a mortgage on your house where your payment is $1,000 a month, it's not tax deductible. You really have to earn $2,000, pay $1,000 of tax to have $1,000 left to pay that mortgage. So that mortgage eats up $24,000 of your annual income right off the bat. If you can make it deductible, you really save 2/3 of the premium. Okay, so making it tax deductible will improve your cash flow, and most people can. There's strategies and ways to do that. Okay, paying too much for inappropriate life insurance, another issue. If you shop for your insurance, you can probably reduce what it costs you. Find a way to do that. Find a way to make your insurance premiums tax deductible. Not always possible, but there might be a strategy to do that.
And if I could add to that, I find that the most important thing when it comes down to having a product is one should understand what they own. Because if you understand what you own, you will be successful with that product and, by extension, the product strategy.
Of course. And that's why you should review your investment plans on at least minimum once a year.
Absolutely.
Full review of all your investment products. Assessed against how much risk, measure the risk. Peter Drucker used to say that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So there's a way to measure investment risk.
Indeed.
It's called standard deviation, and you need to know that. So what is the standard deviation of your portfolio?
And if I could interject again, when we're talking about one's insurance portfolio or solutions, if there's investment components that are built in, that there's variables, that should be part of the review, because there's 2 types of plans, ones with contractual guarantees, and then there are plans with investment where the actual returns and growth in the plan are attached to an investment plan. So you have to review all of that to make sure it's meeting your needs.
You reviewed a policy last week. We looked at a policy, and in this particular case, the policy has been enforced for over 10 years, and the rate of return that the investment part of the policy was returning was negative. Over 10 years, negative? Okay. And the same company that issued that policy has a product which will provide a guarantee at 3% for 10 years.
Correct.
So if nothing else, that investment policy, the cash surrender value part of that policy, or the investment part of that policy, should have been switched into the better investment.
And we are in the midst of restructuring that plan.
Yeah. Okay.
But it should always be reviewed.
And I think the review process is part. The review process is step 10 in the financial planning process that we're talking about. We're going to get there, but that's the review process. That's step 10. Let's talk to Maria from Vancouver. Maria, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Yes, thank you.
Hi, Maria.
Hi. I am not calling in about the financial plan, but I'm calling in to make a comment because the last gentleman hinted about your age, and I'm just going to say something for you, which is, just because people retire around age 65, that does not mean that at age 75 and up, our brain works any less. If anything, we become better with time. Just because our face doesn't look as sharp as 20, that doesn't mean our brain works any less than 20.
You're absolutely right. Couldn't
So
agree
I
with you
just
more.
wanted to make that comment. And you know something? I've met you, and you know what? You look terrific. And
Thanks,
I
Maria.
wouldn't hide my age if I looked as good as you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're
now
very
I'm going to get
welcome, and you
10,000
have a
phone
great
calls.
Okay, bye-bye.
Maria, you have a nice weekend. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your call. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.cil650.com. You can see what we look like. You can tell me if you think I look my age. Frida's down at the office for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air. Area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. How to keep it is what's most important. And the way you're going to keep it, ladies and gentlemen, is to make sure that you have a document called a written financial plan. And we're talking about what that is. We're defining that. We're talking about the anatomy of a written financial plan, okay? So debt reduction was the last step we talked about. The next step is called risk management. That's where you come in.
Indeed.
Because risk management is how do you protect yourself against all the risks that could destroy your financial plan. 2 words, what if? What if I get killed in a car accident on the way home?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to my family? What happens if I get cancer?
You know, there's a 1 in 3 chance of a critical illness before 65.
Yeah. What happens if I get home and my wife has left me? She's not there. What happens if I get fired or laid off? There's so many things that can happen. I was out fishing yesterday. What happens if a rogue wave comes along and flips the boat? Okay. You got to protect yourself against risk. What happens if I get sued? Okay. What if? Ask yourself those that question. 2 words. What if? So what are all the risks that can destroy you, and how do I protect myself against that happening? Critical illness. What is critical illness?
Well, critical illness is a financial security product, but I want to back up a little bit for a moment. And when we're talking about financial security, you alluded to it, it's all about having money when you really need it. So when do you really need money? You need it at the time of death, disability, and retirement. That is really when you need money. So when we're doing risk management planning, if somebody has a health issue, you'll trade your wealth for your health.
Anytime.
Absolutely. So you can indemnify yourself, meaning you can say, you know what, that risk is untenable. Or you could say, by the way, and I always like to throw it out on the table when working with clients, that it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, if that risk occurred, I would sell assets, I would liquidate, I would tap lines of credit, whatever it may be, and we model that and say, would that outcome be acceptable to you? And if somebody says that would be untenable, that's unacceptable, well, then we say, okay, what we want to do is have a risk management program in place. Critical illness is or can be part of that program. And if there is a health issue like critical illness, it will pay out a lump sum to provide the money needed so that one doesn't have to liquidate their life savings.
And what is disability insurance?
Disability insurance is ensuring your ability to earn an income, meaning that if you are unable to do the material duties of your job, they will replace, the insurer will replace usually about 2/3 of your income.
Mm-hmm. So what you're insuring in the event of your disability or critical illness or even death, you're insuring your income.
You're insuring your income.
So that your family or your dependents has that income should you not be there to provide it.
Correct. And when we're talking about financial security planning, there's 2 sides to it. There is risk management, and then there's wealth management.
Sure. And when we talk about risk management, we're really talking about protecting your family, and when we're talking about wealth management, we're talking about protecting our wealth.
Correct. Where
So
what we'll do on the wealth management side of things is we'll take a small amount of somebody's assets and do an asset transferal into different strategies using insurance products to multiply the amount of money available for estate planning and wealth management needs.
Well, a good issue that comes up frequently is someone has a company, and the company or the corporation has retained earnings, and retained earnings, for the sake of those, I hate to use terms like that because some people don't know what it means. The retained earnings is money the corporation makes that it doesn't distribute. It keeps it.
Correct.
Inside the corporation. So you may have a company that could have, we'll say, $1 million sitting in a bank account that's in the name of the corporation. That's called retained earnings. To get that $1 million out of the corporation, if you extract it, you have to pay tax on it, just as if it's income. So how can you get those retained earnings out of the corporation without paying tax becomes the issue. Well, you could buy that universal life policy that we were talking about earlier,
Correct.
At least in the corporate name. The corporation owns the policy, and then they take that $1 million retained earnings and they deposit that into the policy.
Correct.
You pass away, the death benefit is the amount of the insurance plus the retained earnings, and that all flows to the taxpayer tax-free. So technically, the beneficiary got that money without having to pay tax on it.
There is some additional math to that, but predominantly, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it.
Yeah, we're being very
simple.
simple. I always like to
Yeah.
say there's some caveats to that, but most all of it will come out tax-free, if not all of it, over the long term.
And when it comes to the fine details, that's why we have people like you. So you can sit down and further refine that with the particular client. So again, trying to stay on track, but we have a situation here called risk management. That's the title. And under risk management, what are all the risks that you're exposed to is what we've been talking about. We got death, we got disability, we got critical illness, we have divorce, we got job loss, we got income tax issues. There's all kinds of things that can blow your financial plan right out of the water. And you need to have that. That's a very important step to consider. And I want you to visualize this. Visualize a great big binder. And inside the binder, you have 10 subdivisions. And that's what we're talking about. So risk management is one of the tabs on that. Education is another tab. Goals is another tab, and so on.
Indeed.
So you can pick up that binder and walk in to see your financial advisor, and that becomes the hub of the discussion. So when you sit down with your financial advisor, you can go through that page by page by page and say, what about risk management? Is there anything that we forgot or missed? Or this is what's changed when it comes to risk management. I just found out that I have cancer and I'm probably not insurable anymore. So that's a change. That's a material change. That has to be noted. Okay? So that's risk management. The next step is retirement planning. So what's unique about retirement planning? What do we need to know about what does that mean? Let's talk about that.
Well, when we're talking about retirement planning, what you're going to be focusing on is taking that accumulation that you've accumulated through your working life and then structuring an income streams so that you can fund your lifestyle in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're doing that, just to simplify it, I always like to make the point that there's 3 levels of income streams, and actually they follow lockstep with the financial planning formula as well. And that is there's a protection, savings, and investment. And so we want to protect your ability for your income to continue. So we use guaranteed products such as annuities. We want to have money for opportunities and emergencies. So we have savings. That also includes debt reductions in our accumulation years. And then long term, there's this thing called inflation, where a dollar isn't a dollar in 20, 30 years. So we want to have investments. So we have real rates of return, so our accumulation and income can keep up to inflation.
So the rate of inflation is 3%. How long does it take for expenses to double? Divide the rate of return into 72. How many times?
Exactly.
16. No. How many times does 3% go into 72?
Well, it'd be 10. You're not going to pull out a calculator, but it's going to be like, I was looking at you going, I have to calculate that.
I think it's 18.
I think it's around there.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Because 7% would be around 10 years. It would double, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So then let's say.
But if we use the long-term average rate of inflation is 3%, that's what I use for
sure.
An assumed rate of 3% for my
17,
calculations.
at least, yeah.
So you better make sure that your income keeps track or keeps pace with inflation.
Indeed.
So when you look at retirement planning, you have to know how much money you're going to get from the old age pension. And when will that start? You have to know how much money you're going to get from the Canada Pension Plan, and when will that start? You have to know whether you have a defined benefit pension plan or a money purchase plan or a defined contribution plan. You have to know all these things. You have to define your income streams when you retire. Maybe you own 3 or 4 rental houses. You got income coming from the rental properties. Maybe you got $500,000 in RSPs. Convert that to a RIF. How much income are you going to get from the RSPs? So you start defining your income line by line by line, because that's going to finance your retirement. And hopefully there's enough and you don't have a deficit, because that's the next part of it. Because the next part of retirement planning is to define your expenses. What do you need to live? How much are you going to pay for the roof over your head? You're going to keep this expensive house you live in, or are you going to downsize? Okay? How much are you going to spend on vacation? Now that you're retired, you got all kinds of time. Are you going to take a cruise every year?
Sure. Periodically, do you need a new car? You've factored that into the cash flows.
Absolutely. So retirement planning is, how much am I going to need? And where's the money going to come from? And that's defined in the plan. And let's say at the end of the day, you find that you have a surplus. Let's say you got, every month you have $2,000 left over. That's money that you can save and invest. And that leads to the next step, which is capital creation. That's your tax-free savings account and the money that's outside of your RSP. So you have to develop that as well. So it's a good idea to have in the brokerage industry. They call that your cash account. You got your retirement account and your cash account. So how do you build that up, the extra capital that you generate there, okay? And again, you should put the investments, which are not very tax efficient, inside your retirement plan, and the tax efficient investments outside in the capital creation account. And I think it's called asset residency is the term, that they use. So where do your assets reside? Are they outside of the RSP or inside the RSP? An important consideration.
Very much so.
Okay. And so you've got all that. You're up to that. So then you have estate planning.
And really, that's where estate planning comes into play, because you've exhausted all of your tax deferral and tax beneficial programs such as RSPs and tax-free savings accounts. And then you're saying, okay, I have additional funds. What do I want to have happen with those funds? And is there desire to have money for estate planning? So if there's not, you just say, don't worry about it, right? If there is, then we use insurance products with permanent insurance products that can literally double or triple the amount of money mathematically available for these needs.
Well, estate planning and life insurance creates an immediate estate. So if you don't have an estate, if you haven't been able to accumulate any money, a life insurance policy itself creates an immediate estate. Under estate planning, you make sure, wherever possible, that you don't really have any money inside your estate, because if you do, you got to pay. It's got to be subject to probate. You got to pay probate fees and all that kind of stuff. So under estate planning, you need to worry about probate fees. You need to worry about who's the executor. You need to worry about who the guardians of your children are. There's a whole bunch of issues there. And if somebody ever asks you to be an executor, maybe you got to take a second look at that. Be careful, because that can be pretty onerous sometimes as well. So under estate planning, I'd like to say that estate planning is like your legacy, and it's all about love.
I would totally concur with that.
What are the plans for the disposition of your body should you pass away? You'd be amazed how many people haven't even looked at that. The kids don't know. I remember when one of my aunts passed away, and her daughter called me from Ottawa one time and basically said, we don't know what to do with the body. Can you help us make a decision? It isn't my decision to make. It's not my mother. But I said, well, how about cremation? But maybe that's not what she wanted. Who knows? Now, she should have discussed that with her daughters, and they should have known that. That's estate planning. Okay, the proper will. Do you have a proper will? Is it up to date? Have you taken into account the Wills Variation Act to make sure that your will is valid? The WESA rules and the changes in estate planning recently.
Quite significant.
Okay. So is your will valid? Because if your will isn't valid, it goes to probate and they prove it's not valid, that can be the same as dying intestate.
Well, essentially it is, yes.
As if you never had a will in the first place. Okay? So these are all issues that are extremely important to understand. So 604-280-0650. Tell us what you think. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. If you want to see what I look like, see if I look like I'm 80. Okay. I'm almost 81. Frida down at the office, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Talking about your money and how to keep it. And we could talk about this subject for hours and hours and hours because it really is my favorite topic. I know that people out there are not doing what they should be doing when it comes to earning, investing, and keeping money. Look at your investment portfolio. So again, if you give us a call, we get you in writing an analysis, an X-ray, if you want to call it that, an MRI on your investment portfolio, and that measures how risky it is. Like maybe standard deviation is 5, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 40. If it's 40, it's too risky probably for most people. I sit down with people and I say, what's your tolerance for risk? Yeah, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? Well, I know. Do you like to go to Las Vegas? Yeah. Well, maybe you like to take risk. Not with my investments. Okay. So do you want, I say, let's take a look at your investment portfolio. Did you realize that your investment portfolio is high risk? And you just told me that you don't want to take risk? I didn't know that. You got to check that out. What is the expected rate of return on your portfolio? That's a calculation that can be made. Is the expected rate of return on your portfolio 12% or 3%? If the expected rate of return is 3% and you need 12, you're not going to achieve your financial objectives. You're going to miss for sure. And if the expected rate of return is 12 and you only need 3, maybe you're taking more risk than you need to.
And Fred, there's a saying that I always love to repeat. I didn't make this up, but when we're talking about planning, it's so important to do planning and identify exactly what you just said. And the saying that comes to mind is you only know who's swimming naked when the tide goes out.
Well said. Well said. What's the efficient frontier?
Well, when we're talking about efficient frontier and we're talking about constructing portfolios, it's all about risk and reward. So how much risk, how much fluctuations in your capital are you willing to take for a certain amount of reward? And that's rate of return. So the efficient frontier is having the optimal mix of investments so you get the best return for the amount of risk that you're taking.
It measures those two factors.
Correct.
The guy that invented that was Harry Markovich.
Correct.
Did I pronounce that correct?
It's close enough.
Okay. We have to go to the break. We're going to go to the break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking about the efficient frontier. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
Statistically, if you take 100 people who start out equal today at the age of 25, by the time they end up at 65, 1 is wealthy, 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the rest are dead broke, dependent on family and state. That's over half the people who start out equal at age 25 by the time they end up at 65 are dependent on family and state. And that's a sad state of statistics.
Fred Snyder.
You need a blueprint that says this is where you're at right now, and this is where you want to go, and this is the way to get there.
Fred Snyder.
So isn't it time to get that good, warm, fuzzy feeling because you know exactly where you're at? You know that your investments are going to work for you. You know that you have the right investments inside your financial plan. You're confident about the future because you've covered all the bases. You know exactly how much life insurance you need, and you have the right amount of insurance. You have a financial advisor, such as myself, or somebody that's equally competent that you can check with to determine whether you're on track or not. And whether you're on track or not, I like to use the analogy, do you have a GPS?
Fred's got your GPS. Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. Welcome back to It's Your Money on CIL 650. If you have a question for Fred, call 604-280-0650. Now, back to Fred.
In case you didn't get that, I'm going to repeat it again. It's 604-280-0650. 604-280-0650. If you're calling long distance, it's a free call. It's 877-280-0650. Now, again, if you're shy or reluctant to talk on the air, you can talk to Frida. She's down at the office at area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it, and we're talking about the anatomy of a financial plan, and we're talking about evaluating investments. We were talking about the risk in your investment portfolio, and we're talking about how to measure that, and we alluded to the term efficient frontier. Harry Markowitz, I think is how you pronounce it. But anyway, he's a Nobel laureate. He invented this concept which measures that. It measures the balance between risk and reward. The more the risk, the greater the potential reward. The less the risk, the less the reward. There's a relationship between the two. And how do you measure that? Okay? So there's actually a chart with a curved line. And the curved line that runs from the left to the right is called the efficient frontier. And if you plot all the investments according to risk and reward on that chart, it's like a scatter chart, the investments which come closest to the line are said to be the most efficient. And they're the ones you pick. So how many investment funds are there in Canada right now? 12,000 or so?
There are lots.
It's something like 12,000. And then there's derivatives of each one of those as well, which complicates it even further. So how do you get the information that we're looking for? Well, I use Morningstar Advisor Workstation. And that's an absolutely awesome piece of software. I can find out the relationship, the terms, the statistics, the vital statistics on just about any portfolio, just about any stock, just about any mutual fund that's out there using this software. And ask your financial advisor. You got an investment statement. He's presented you with it. You say, well, tell me, Mr. Advisor, how did you select these investments? How do I know that this one here is the best investment in its category that's available? And how do I know this one is? Tell me about your selection process. Fair ball?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how do advisors and how should they select investments? What's the criteria? Well, I'll tell you what I do. I say I want to have the top Canadian equity value fund performance-wise over the last 5 years. So I ask my software that. Boom, I get a list. The one at the top of the list is the best one. Then I drill into that one and I look, is there any reason why not to choose this one? Okay? Because that doesn't measure risk, it just measures reward. So if the risk is too high, I might not pick it. I might go to number 2. Okay? But you have to have a criteria. If you don't have that criteria, how in the world can you do it? Like where would Apple stock fit on that efficient frontier chart? Any idea?
Well, if you're choosing one specific security, that would be taking an awful lot of risk. So when you're constructing a portfolio, it's important to understand you're constructing a portfolio of dozens, if not hundreds, of different securities that all have correlations to each other and are optimally combined.
I talked to a fellow not very long ago that told me that he was doing very well because he was a day trader. He said, I bought and sold Apple 6 times today, and I made a ton of money. Can you tell me and our listeners what he was doing?
Well, in my books, and of course I have a certain bias because when we're looking at investing is a long-term activity. Yeah. And from my perspective, that's a form of betting.
That's gambling.
It's gambling.
But you say long-term investing isn't.
Long-term investing is looking at companies.
Probably isn't as much.
Well, over the long term, it's quite considerable, but we're looking at companies and holding them for long-term periods so that those companies, as they do better and do well, will reflect that retained earnings we've talked about, that the company's worth more, they're earning more. So that's investing as opposed to betting on short-term moves. And that indeed is a form of betting.
Mm-hmm.
So either you're an investor or you're somebody who likes to bet, and I don't want to make judgments either way. Obviously, I've cast my lot in financial planning is all about investing.
When we talk about investing and we talk about value investing, that's what Warren Buffett does.
Indeed.
Do you want to explain that?
Well, again, it's exactly what I said. He looks at a specific company, and he has dozens, if not hundreds of companies. However, he says, what is the long-term trajectory of this company? Are they going to make money? Are they going to do well in their chosen niche? And then he says, I'm going to invest for a long period of time and hold this company till it reflects the value that I believe that company has.
In other words, he buys it at a discount. He buys it for less than its intrinsic value.
Correct.
Okay. So what is intrinsic value? I'm using terms that I shouldn't really be using because it might confuse people. What is intrinsic value?
Well, intrinsic value is very much a subjective value because you're saying, I believe that embedded in this security is a certain value, and over time it will reflect that value. So I believe it's intrinsic to that company, that investment. And that's what investment analysts such as Warren Buffett and different fund managers do, is they look at these securities and say, even if it's trading at a low valuation, where down the line will this security be? So it has an intrinsic value.
Because if I hold it long enough, it's bound to come back to its real value.
Correct.
Okay. So would you say that real estate in Vancouver is priced above its intrinsic value right now?
Well, I think I'll refrain from commenting on that.
I think it likely is. Okay. But who knows? It's all supply and demand, isn't it?
Indeed. At the end of the day.
I guess at the end of the day, that's the way it affects the stock market too.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody wants Apple stock, they're going to drive the stock sky high. And if nobody wants it, even if its intrinsic value is really good, it's going to go down, though, if nobody wants to buy it.
Indeed.
Okay. So that's the bottom line. So when we talk about investing, we're up to the financial planner, getting back to the financial plan. We talk about estate planning or your legacy. That's step 9 in the process.
And when we're talking about legacy, it's important to identify that it's about soft facts before we get to the hard facts. So the soft facts are legacy is different for everybody. So you have to have that heart-to-heart conversation of what is important to you, who do you love, what do you want to leave behind, what has your life been about, and then based on what somebody tells you, you say, okay, there are certain strategies that we can use to have much more capital to provide for those desires.
What's the emotional connection?
Again,
Right
you
on.
said it best in that it's all about people who love people, and usually it's one's family. It could be a charitable bequest that they feel very deeply about. Most of the time I find it's about family. But at the end of the day, we want to provide people with the strategies and wherewithal to accomplish those goals. And when we're doing that, we're using insurance products as product solutions to provide more capital for those desires.
Okay, so the last step after legacy, step 10, is called the review process.
Indeed.
And I think the review process is probably as important as any other step in the process.
Most definitely.
So how often should someone review their financial plan? How often should someone review their investments? When is the last time you, listener, had a serious evaluation of your investment portfolio, a serious evaluation of your insurance products, and how they fit into your lifestyle? How do you know whether you're paying too much or too little for suitable life insurance or any other form of insurance for that matter? You see all the ads on television all the time where they come on and they talk about getting a deal, Geico cutting the cost of your automobile insurance, just as an example. But insurance of all kinds is an expense. And if you're paying more than you should, if you can reduce that cost, that provides you with additional discretionary income that you can save and invest. If you can reduce the taxes you pay, that provides you with additional discretionary income that you can save and invest. You can invest money for your future that you would normally pay out in income tax if you can find ways to legitimately reduce the taxes you pay. And everybody should do that. And what we're talking about right now is getting a proper financial plan. And the last step in the process is the review process. Because if you just can't make a plan, put it on the shelf and let it gather dust and forget about it. It's not on cruise control. You have to manage that plan. And when you sit down with your financial advisor, you need to be able to talk about something. It's like before I go to my doctor for a checkup, I make a list of all the things that I want checked, because inevitably I'll go in there and I'll forget to ask something. I'll bet you we all do that. Okay? Let's talk to Mavis from Vancouver. Mavis, welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, when one have everything joined with one spouse, and if one spouse dies, doesn't it everything automatically goes to the other spouse?
Not necessarily.
Why is that? Why do one join them?
It depends on whether the joint ownership is joint with rights of survivorship or not.
Well, joint of rights of survivorship, like my bank account.
If your bank account is set up with your spouse, jointly with rights of survivorship, you pass away, it automatically goes to your spouse, or vice versa. You're right, but if it's joint tenants in common, that doesn't happen.
Joint tenant in common.
That's correct.
Oh, so it's the right of survivorship is the word.
Right, yeah. Rights of survivorship is the key phrase that needs to be in place. That means that you could own something jointly with your spouse and your children and everything else. Everybody, it would be split in that manner. The surviving part of your family would become the owner, and you're out of the picture at that particular point.
Although, if I can interject
Sure,
with
go
one
ahead.
comment,
Yeah.
and that is that it's very important, because when we make broad statements on the radio, or if you're reading something in the newspaper, it's very important to sit down with a professional and go through asset by asset and how they're held, so that the intended outcome is what occurs. Because there are caveats when we're talking about joint with rights of survivorship. But generally, what Fred has said is very correct.
No one should listen to this show and then take what they hear on this show and try to implement it without seeking the advice of a well-qualified financial advisor, whether that's you or me or who it is.
It's a general overview.
Yeah.
So and I heard something like that one have to have a letter of intent. So
a letter of intent, if you had a family member, not a spouse, but a family member on an investment account as an example, just by having them on the investment account as joint, if you want, as a part of your passing away, for that account to go to them and not to go through probate, you have to have a letter of intent. And by the way, that's one of the caveats I was thinking of when we were talking about this.
So how does one make one?
Well,
again, go to a lawyer?
A lawyer can definitely do that for you. Some institutions have forms you can use. But I would definitely urge you, if you're to do a full review with a professional and make sure everything is documented properly.
I have a team of professionals that I work with, and Anthony is one of them. But I have another professional by the name of Tim Lack, who's a lawyer. Anybody needs a lawyer, it'd be a good idea to give Tim a call. I don't have the number at my fingertips, but if you call Frida, you could get that number. And he's with Lenny Atmore, and he's a specialist when it comes to estate planning.
Okay. So joint tenant in common is not...
well, there may be reasons to do that. There may be reasons not to set up property joint with rights of survivorship. Here's an example. Supposing that you have 3 children, and you have a spouse that you're separated or divorced from, and one of your children moves in with that spouse, and that spouse puts that child on title. Then she passes away, the house becomes, the child becomes the owner of that property then at that particular time. Let's say that child gets married, complete stranger. Well, then perhaps half that house now goes to the complete stranger in the event of a marital breakdown. You may not want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one example of many that need to be considered. You can't. That's why we say earlier that it's not wise to just listen to this show, get some kind of an idea, and go out and try to implement it yourself. Because free is not necessarily free. You try to do it yourself, you can really mess things up. And then maybe you really do need a lawyer. Okay? So what you try to do when it makes sense is have an estate that has nothing in it. If you have an estate with nothing in it, you avoid probate fees. You can name beneficiaries. You don't even probably need a will, if that's the case. But the objective is, how can you have an estate with nothing in it. Well, you make somebody the beneficiary of your RIF, somebody the beneficiary of your RSP, somebody the beneficiary of your TFSA. You own property jointly with rights of survivorship wherever possible. But you need to evaluate the pros and cons of each one of those particular issues. For example, the largest RSP I've ever seen, a woman came in my office, she had $5 million in an RSP. $5 million and no spouse. Guess how much revenue Canada gets if she passes away? $2.5 million. How could you protect yourself against that loss? Life insurance with a death benefit of $2.5 million. It's tax-free, providing she can get it, providing she isn't in her 80s and she's too old where the cost would be prohibitive. These are things that you can do. And sometimes it's necessary to do them before you need them so that they're there when you do need them.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Mavis, you enjoy this great weekend. Fabulous.
You too. Thank
Appreciate
you.
your call. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mavis's line is now open, so if you just joined us, I'm certified financial planner. Got a stamp right on my back. Certified. Certified financial planner, also registered financial planner. I represent Scotia McLeod, actually Scotia Wealth Management. Name changed because wealth management is more about what we do rather than being sellers of financial products. We do wealth management, which is the whole process. That's what we're talking about. And we're talking about the way to do that. And the way to do that is to avail yourself of a proper written financial plan. So the anatomy of a financial plan is that book that we talked about with all those subsections in it, 10 of them, and the last one is the review process. It's all laid out. It's a roadmap. It's a blueprint that says, this is where I'm at right now. These are my goals. This is how I'm going to achieve them. This is about my financial future, and that's what we're talking about. So what does your financial future look like? Is it fuzzy, or is it crystal clear? Have you taken the time to sit down and develop crystal clear financial goals? You can see them. You can visualize them. Do you have a written plan with deadlines? Are you motivated? Do you have a burning desire to achieve those particular financial goals? Do you believe that you have the ability to achieve those goals? And do you have the iron will determination to pursue your plan, regardless of circumstances, criticism, or what other people say, think, or do? Is that you? Are you a meaningful specific or a wandering generality, as Zig Ziglar used to say? Meaningful specific or wandering generality? Maybe it's time to grab yourself by the bootstraps and smarten up. Get yourself a financial plan. Make a resolution that you're going to do better. Become obsessed with achieving financial independence while you're still young enough to enjoy it. Let's talk about it. 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. And for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air, Frida's down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner. I'm talking with Anthony Windier. I'm a generalist, he's a specialist. I generalize, or I deal with the generalities of the overall financial planning process. But I'm a pretty fair specialist when it comes to a few things myself. Don't want to run myself down in that particular area. But Anthony Windier, he's an expert when it comes to life insurance and financial planning as well, really. So you have a question? You have a comment? Give us some feedback. We'd enjoy that very much. Participate in the show. If you give us a call, you get a second opinion in writing on your investment portfolio using Morningstar Advisor Workstation, an absolute printout. Get all the information, an x-ray of your financial plan or your financial investment products. You give us a call, you get an analysis of your life insurance products that you have right now, and they should be analyzed. If you give us a call, we'll answer your questions, and as well, we'll give you a written financial plan at absolutely no cost or obligation. I know that at least 3/4 of the people listening to this show right now do not have a written financial plan. You think you don't need one? You're wrong. Everybody needs one. I think Anthony would agree on that one.
Most definitely.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about why. Why do people fail financially? Now, you've been around not quite as long as me, but you've been around a long time.
Indeed.
Lots of experience. So you've seen all kinds of people.
Years.
You're on the Financial Planning Standards Council.
Well, I'm not on the Standards Council. I'm part of the media relations team, and we are obviously both CFPs.
Yeah.
So we are part of the Financial Planning Standards Council. They designate us with the CFP designation.
Okay, you're close enough.
Okay.
So tell me, why in the hell do people fail financially? The most important thing in the world. Like, you tell me you don't like money? Come on, I think you'd lie about other things, okay? Like, you can't tell me you don't like money. I know I've been rich and I've been poor, and I'd rather be rich. All right? And it's not cold, hard cash. It's soft, it's warm, it's cuddly. The more you have, the better you feel.
Well, let's actually delve into that a little bit, because I like to use the example when we're talking about financial security and financial planning, that psychologists have done extensive studies on what makes us happy and gives us a sense of happiness in our lives. And it comes down, it's direct and proportionate to the amount of control we feel over our lives. If we feel a sense of control, there's a direct and proportionate amount of happiness that goes along with that.
And generally speaking, the more money you have, the more you're in control.
And definitely, in addition to that, if you have a financial plan and you feel you're taking measurable, meaning steps towards accomplishing your goals, financial and otherwise, you're going to feel a sense of control, which will obviously give you more happiness in your life.
So you want to be more happy? Get yourself a financial plan.
You'll have more control.
Step one in the financial plan might very well be to get yourself in a really strict budget.
Very important.
Start in a small way if you like, but start. Start putting away $100 a month. Even $50 a month, or as much as you can. Pay yourself first. Remind yourself that part of everything you earn is yours to keep, not to spend. Let's talk to David from Langley. David, welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, David.
I have consolidated all of my assets into, not all of them, but significant amount into cash and gold, and I put it in a safety deposit box. And I'm wondering, that is not going to be taxable. That is going to be accessible to the people that I leave it to, without worrying about government getting their hands on it, as I'm already paying the government significant amounts anyway.
Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Well, as a Canadian resident, you're subject to pay tax on your worldwide income. That includes capital gains. So just because you put, let's say you put $1,000 worth of gold in your safety, I guess it wouldn't be very much, but let's say for the just sake of argument, you put $10,000 worth of gold in a safety deposit box, and you leave it there for 10 years, and 10 years from now it doubles in value. You have a capital gain of $10,000. Probably not recorded anywhere, but you're required to report that on your tax return. Whether you do or not, it's another question. Okay, you may have money offshore. You say, well, I don't have to report it. Nobody knows about it. But legally, you're required to report it.
I have only the safety deposit with actual cash, which is not going to...
the cash won't appreciate it. The cash will depreciate in value.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Okay.
But the gold is going to appreciate, but I don't have to deal with this. Is going to go to my family. So how do they deal with that?
Well, your executor will have to deal with it if you die, because at the moment you die, you're deemed to have sold that gold at fair market value.
Now, if there's no record of it,
if there's no record, they're probably not going to catch you, but there might be some way they can get. Somebody blows the whistle on you.
It is predominantly a volunteer tax system we belong to.
I understand that. And as I said, I'm paid significant taxes all my life. So this is not a cash grab, or it just, I don't want the people that going to have to be paying.
Well, when you actually if you're going to use this for estate planning purposes, your trustee, your executor, is going to have to file a terminal return. And in that terminal return, hypothetically, this gold will have to be accounted for. And if there was a gain, it would be taxes would be levied upon it. So, in essence, yes, it's taxable.
And if you put cash inside your safety deposit box, it's not generating any interest where it could be generating interest if it was outside, and you'd have to pay tax on the interest, but not 100% tax on the interest. You got still some profit.
So this then comes down to the honor of the executor.
Well, it's the executor's responsibility to square up with CRA.
They will be held liable.
Yeah. The bottom line is that we have something that very few people don't understand very well, and it's called the famous deemed disposition. When you die, you're deemed to have sold everything you own at fair market value. When you leave the country, it's a deemed disposition. When you give property to somebody else, it's a deemed disposition, which means the government says, let's pretend that you sold that property, even though you gave it away, you didn't really sell it. Let's pretend that you sold it. If you did, what would the tax be? They calculate the tax, say, well, send us the money anyway. That's what happens. And people think they can beat the tax man by giving money to their kids, by leaving the country, or setting up offshore trusts and all kinds of things like that. You can't. Not legally anyway. I'm not going to say that you can't cheat, but don't get caught.
I hate saying the word cheat because it's more, well, anyway, I understand your opinion, and I appreciate your thought. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, David, I appreciate the call. You take care. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, David's line is now open, and we're getting down to the last half hour of the show here pretty soon. We got to go to the break pretty soon. Again, I'm talking with Anthony Windier. We're both with Scotia Wealth Management. We're both CFPs. He's got more designations than me, but I have one that he doesn't have. I'm an RFP. And again, I've dedicated my life, my raison d'etre is to teach people what they need to know to make better financial decisions. That's what I do. That's why I do seminars and workshops. That's why I do this radio show, write many, many articles. And frankly, right now I'm taking a course on advanced investment management, okay? And part of the course, I did some reading this morning, and that's on international taxation. That's offshore trusts and all that kind of stuff. And people think that they can set up an account in Switzerland or they can set up accounts in the Cayman Islands and all that kind of stuff, and they get away from the tax man. Remember this, that CRA can knock on your door and say, we want a balance sheet. We want you to give us a list of your assets and your liabilities. And if you have money in the Cayman Islands, as an example, you have to list that. And if you don't list it, it's a criminal offense. Okay. So you can't get around things like that. You need to do things legitimately. And that's why you need a proper financial plan. That's why you need a coach. You need somebody to guide you through the steps in that particular financial plan. You need to stay on top of it. You need to be able to sit down at least once a year and review it. That's what it's all about. So I've seen many, many situations which weren't very good, and I'm sure that you have too.
Indeed.
Okay. So what advice would you give our listeners in general? If they want to do better financially, where do they start?
Well, I always find that what's fascinating about financial planning is it's all about emotion, right? You want to sit down with somebody and understand what is the emotional landscape they're dealing with. And then, as I mentioned earlier, then you want to go to the hard facts. What needs to be done? Because at the status quo, if you project out using a planning process and somebody says that outcome, if I continue doing what I'm doing today, is not what I want to see, well, then you have to model a strategy that is going to help them get to where they want to go. And I always like to say that if I asked you to start walking to Chilliwack today, you'd probably laugh at me and go, you're crazy, I'm not going to walk to Chilliwack. But if I told you,
walk to Vancouver.
If I told you to walk to Chilliwack and there's $1 million waiting for you when you get into Chilliwack,
Hey, well,
you say, I got to start walking right now.
turn me loose.
Exactly. So when we're talking about the planning process, it's enabling you to accomplish your goals and get you on your way towards accomplishing those goals.
Let's go to the break. Don't go away. Because the name of the game is to create cash flow.
Fred Snyder.
So just visualize yourself. If you want to go to Hawaii every year, you're lying on the beach, you can feel the hot sun beating down on your back. You know, you get up, you take a walk, you can feel the hot sand crunch between your toes, you hear the waves lapping on the beach, the seagulls circling overhead. You know, you got to be able to visualize all this. And this is not just for you, this is for anybody else that's out there listening to the show. You have to motivate yourself. And the way you motivate yourself is being able to visualize yourself enjoying your objectives, as I just did.
And that's why I'm calling you.
Okay?
Fred Snyder.
That's the key. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you can afford to pursue and enjoy your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions. That's what we're talking about.
Fred Snyder.
If you have a financial plan and you're somewhere in the middle and you're wondering what tweaks that you should make in that plan to make it what you really want it to be, time to make a phone call. Or if maybe you're just getting started out and you want to get a starter plan, maybe it's time to talk to somebody like myself and get yourself on the right track.
Call Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy.
CIL 650.
You're listening to It's Your Money on CIL 650. Once again, here is Fred Snyder.
It's your money. We're back. Let me tell you something. It's only your money if you keep it. It's not your money if you spend it. Somebody else is after you spend it. So if you're going to make sure it's your money, you have to understand that part of everything you earn is yours to keep. And the only way you're ever going to be able to do that is to pay yourself first. You have to find a way to invest money for yourself that you normally pay out in income tax. So you need to sit down with a financial advisor, such as myself or such as Anthony, and you have to say, I want to do better financially. I really want to do better. I'm not achieving my potential from a financial point of view. So how can I do better financially? Well, one of the companies I used to work for used to say, start in a small way if you like, but start. Okay? So how do you start? Well, maybe the question becomes, how can I find a way to put away $100 a month? How can I find a way to pay myself first $100 a month? That leads to the next question. Where do I get the $100 a month? Is there a way to reduce my tax bill by $100 a month? Well, let's say you own a house. Let's say the property taxes on the house are $2,400 a year. That's $200 a month. You could defer your property taxes. You now have $200 a month that you can save and invest. There, I found a way. That'll work for some people. Let's say that you have a house that's worth $1 million. Let's say you decide to put a reverse mortgage on that house. And you take the proceeds of the reverse mortgage and you buy yourself a second residence in Tucson. You don't have to make any payments anymore on your mortgage. So whatever your mortgage payment, let's say your mortgage payment was $2,000 a month. You don't have an extra $2,000 a month cash flow. Let's say that you budget to buy your groceries. You grow a vegetable garden in your backyard and so on. You find a way to reduce what you spend on groceries through proper budgeting. You might be able to find $100 a month there or whatever. Go through what you spend line by line by line by line with a financial advisor and say, how can I cut my costs? Because if you can cut your costs, then you're going to have more money left over at the end of the month. If you have a deficit at the end of the month, you do the calculations, and let's say you have a deficit of $200 a month. That's your shortfall. Where's that $200 a month come from? Somehow it comes from someplace. Well, you probably end up putting that on your line of credit or your credit cards or whatever. You're wondering why your line of credit is getting bigger. Where's that cash going? How's it? It's slipping through the cracks. So what's happening? What's causing that to happen? How can you reduce your costs and increase your income? Is there some way that you can get more income? Let's say that you have an investment portfolio and you're just drawing out dividends. Take a systematic withdrawal plan and increase the income that you get from your investment portfolio. There's a myriad of ways that you can find extra money by way of income or find extra money by reducing expenses. And maybe you need some help doing it. You just can't Google it and say, how can I reduce my expenses? But I'll bet you get some answers there too, if you did. Okay. So find a way to develop a strategy that's going to give you a positive cash flow so that you have money that you can save and invest for yourself. I once read an article one time that said the secret to financial success is to spend 70% of your after-tax income and take the other 30% and take 10% of it and invest it passively, 10% actively, and give the other 10% to charity. That's 30%. Wow. I don't know anybody that's doing that. That's a pretty steep burden, but that's what the article said. But compromise. Cut all those numbers in half. It's better than doing nothing at all. And the best way to do something is to do it now. Like Larry the Cable Guy says, get her done. Okay? Start. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait till the baby is born. Don't wait till you get a better job. Don't wait till you get your car paid off. Don't wait. Start now in a small way if necessary, but start. Because it becomes a habit. And a good habit is just as difficult to break as a bad one. I don't know about you. Did you ever smoke? You probably did. You're a pretty healthy guy.
Yes, I'm definitely a committed athlete.
Did you ever smoke?
I did, sadly, just for a couple of years. And, it was interesting because my wife and I are big-time ballroom dancers.
Yes.
And at the time, this is this is like, my early 20s, and it was, even maybe 1920. It was like a very short period of time, but I could feel it. And I just thought to myself, you know what? This is making my exercise laborious, and I quit.
Sure.
Because it was just the toll it was taking. When we're talking about the toll, was just too great.
Well, let's just talk about smoking as an example. You want to find a way to find some money to save and invest. Now, this won't appeal to a lot of people, but I still think there's a lot of people that smoke. And I know that the cost of a package of cigarettes is $10. Okay? Costs $10. And most smokers smoke a pack a day. But unfortunately, the cost of those cigarettes is not tax deductible. So you got to earn $20. Pay $10 of tax to have $10 left to buy those cigarettes. Now, if you could put, if you figure that out, it comes to $600 a month. So you could put $600 a month into an RRSP for the same money it costs you to buy your cigarettes. So you quit smoking and you put $600 a month into your RRSP. The numbers are the same cost. Except in this case, you're not killing yourself slowly, and you're accumulating wealth. And as you accumulate wealth, you're also creating a habit. And a good habit is just as difficult to break as a bad one.
Indeed.
You get in the habit of saving money, it's hard to stop. I know. I have elderly people that are clients, and they have small fortunes invested with me, and they still save and invest on a regular basis because they can't stop. They're obsessed, and they don't need to save anymore. But they like doing it. They like looking at their investment statements and seeing it grow and grow and grow. So that's important. So pay yourself first. Find a way to do it. Start with a financial plan. Start with an appointment. Give Frida a call. You can reach Frida right now. Area code 604-737-3512. Long distance 1-800-661-1495. If you give her a call, make an appointment to see myself. Second opinion on your investment portfolio. Written financial plan, no cost or obligation. And if you got some life insurance policies, we will analyze those and make sure that you're not paying too much for the wrong kind. Now, what can you add to that?
Well, I love your example of how when people get into the habit of saving, it becomes part of their wherewithal, part of their enjoyment of that whole process. And psychologists, when we're talking about pushing past that static point and starting an actual plan, they call something we don't want to look at a scotoma. It's a mental blind spot. We just don't want to look at it. And once you finally look at it and actually take action, I found that people have a greater sense of overall self-worth and a feeling of satisfaction pushing forward.
Okay. So maybe that's the meaning of happiness. I think happiness is the gradual realization of worthwhile goals. So if you're moving forward, if you have a burning desire to achieve something, it means something is a goal, and you have a burning desire to get there, and you're moving towards it. You have this tremendous feeling of happiness. If you're not, and you're going in the wrong direction or you're blocked, that's frustration. And it doesn't create happiness. And I think, really, the schools should teach people more about motivation, and we'd have fewer drug addicts and things like that. These people are looking for satisfaction in their lives, and somehow they find it in drugs.
Well, with regards to, I can't talk about motivational programs, but with regards to financial planning, Junior Achievement does offer a financial planning course. They call it their Money Sense program, and about a few times a year I volunteer for it. And part of the program is to explain to grade 8s and 9s how financial planning works, how a budget works. We actually have them walk through the budgeting process and explaining how important, what a high predictor of success it's going to be in the future when you actually have earned income and you're able to be a good steward with your means. And it's fascinating to see the light bulb go off with these young people.
Well, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. How do you find the money to save and invest? Where's it come from? You got to do it. I mean, take two people. One person does it. They grow and they develop. They're on the winning path. The other person doesn't do it. And they end up at 65 or 70 or 75, doesn't really matter, and they look back on their lives. The person that does it is going to look back on his or her life and say, I'm really glad I did that, and I like the guy I used to be. The other guy's going to look back and he's going to hate the guy he used to be because he didn't look after his future. And it's easy to visualize yourself. Visualize yourself at age 60 or 70 or 80, whenever it is. Visualize yourself sitting in your beach house. You open the door and the sun comes streaming in, and you can feel that nice warm sun and hear the breeze coming across the ocean. You step outside, you feel the hot sand crunch between your toes. And you know that you did the right thing with your money, or you wouldn't be able to do this. Or alternatively, you can look at yourself. You're in the poorhouse. You can turn your pockets inside out, and there's nothing in there but fleas that fly out. Okay? You're broke. You got no money. You got no freedom. You're not happy. You've probably had all kinds of marital issues. Life is miserable. And you've wasted your life. And you can't look back at that age and fix it. It's gone. It's gone forever. Today, when you look forward, you can fix it. And how do you fix it?
Taking those initial steps.
Yeah. You get yourself a proper financial advisor. Maybe that's even better than the plan itself. Start looking for because a proper financial advisor will encourage you to get the plan in the first place. So if you give Frida a call and you say, okay, I want to start the process, make an appointment, come on in and sit down, and we'll look at your whole situation. So you get Frida right now, area code 604-737-3512, long distance 1-800-661-1495. So again, as Zig Ziglar used to say, become a meaningful specific, not a wandering generality. Which are you? And again, as I said earlier, I've been rich and I've been poor, and I'd rather be rich. And given the choice, which choice would you make? Someone once said that that money is the root of all evil. I don't believe that that's true. Maybe the love of money is the root of all evil. Maybe being too obsessed with money, even though I still have a hard time buying that as well. Okay. Because I think in order to be successful at anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you have to have a burning desire. You used to teach motivation, so you understand the factors involved in motivation. And Napoleon Hill once said, anything you can vividly imagine, ardently desire, believe you can, and enthusiastically act upon will inevitably come to pass. So how do you fit into that equation? So like I said earlier, start in a small way if you like, but start. And maybe the small way is simply to make a phone call. So you get on the phone right now and you give Frida a call at area code 604-737-3512. And if you're calling long distance, it's 1-800-661-1495. And if you want to get a hold of Anthony, you can reach Anthony through that same number. And I don't mind if you want to give your phone number out.
Well, actually, Fred, I work through you, so if you call Frida,
okay,
you'll get a hold of me.
Okay, so all you got to do is call Frida. And again, I remind you that it's complimentary. There's no cost. There is no obligation of any kind whatsoever. Written financial plan, second opinion on your investment portfolio in writing. So let's summarize. We talked about the anatomy of a financial plan. And step one is education. So you have to sit down right now and define, where do you get your financial education? And it's not just something you do and then it's over. It's an ongoing process. It goes on forever. So where do you acquire your financial knowledge is well defined, and it's in your plan. The second step is to establish crystal clear financial goals. Do you have any well-defined financial goals? Like a financial goal might be that I want to retire at age 65 with an inflation-adjusted income of $50,000 a year, and I figure I'm going to live to age 85 to last over that particular time span. So I have an inflation-adjusted income. That's my goal. That's just one of them.
That's a nice, specific goal.
I want to be able to take a cruise every year. I have a client that I have told her many, many, many times that you have to buy the roof over your head. You should own the roof over your head. She said, I refuse to do that. I want to travel. And she's retired right now, and she's a client of mine, and she does travel. Not very long ago, she did a world trip all around the world, 4 months. She does a couple of cruises every year. And that's it. And she said, that's what I want to do. That's her goal. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not.
You might want to have yourself a second residence in a warm country, or even a place at Whistler, which is, we'll say, a cold country. Doesn't matter. Maybe you want a nice yacht. I don't care what it is. Your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions, whatever it is, that's section 2 of your financial plan. And they need to be well defined. Step 3 is get out of debt. Get rid of your debts. Okay? Convert all your bad debts, if you have any bad debts, into good debt. Bad debts are you financed a depreciating asset, like a car. The interest rates are high and they're not deductible. So convert bad debt to good debt, or get rid of it altogether if you can. So what is the debt elimination process? That's step 3. Step 4 is risk management. That's where you come in.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're talking not only about life insurance, though. We're talking about critical illness insurance, disability insurance, all forms of insurance, even your household insurance, everything.
Well,
okay?
I focus on people, not things,
I know that.
just to be specific.
Yeah, I know. But generally, all forms of insurance come under that particular section. So you may require a couple of advisors to help you in that particular area.
Absolutely.
Okay, because you got to be licensed to handle.
Exactly.
Like you can't handle homeowners insurance, as an example. Okay, that's important to understand. Okay, so risk management. What are all the risks that can destroy your financial plan? I use a memory jogger called "What If." what if this happened or that happened and so on? What are all the what ifs that can blow your financial plan up?
And when we're talking about the planning process and the what ifs, I always like to use the example of when you see somebody on TV and their house is burning down. I don't mean to be mean or anything, but their house is burning down and they're visibly upset. Well, if they had no insurance, they were practicing risk retention, right? They retain that risk. And in the planning process, what we do is we walk through your risks. We look at them and say, well, as you mentioned, what if? What if this occurred? And is it okay if we retain this risk? It means that we're going to liquidate assets, taps lines of credit, what have you, to deal with the financial fallout. Or if that is untenable, unacceptable, well, then we're going to transfer the risk. And there's no right or wrong. It's just going through the planning process and being clear on what is acceptable to you.
Yeah. So that's one more step in the financial planning process. The next step is retirement planning.
And wealth management.
Yeah. Let me make retirement planning very, very simple. Retirement planning is when I retire, what are my expenses? What's my budget look like? And where will the money come from? We're talking about your pension plans, your Canada pension plan, your old age pension, or Social Security. You want to
Legacy.
define guaranteed income issue, all that. Guaranteed income supplement, I meant to say. You got all those issues. What is my income when I retire? And what are my expenses, or what is my budget? And then when there's money left over, if you do a budget at that particular time and you have money left over, the excess over and above that goes into capital growth, or capital management, I should call. And I'm talking about your TFSA as an example.
Exactly.
Or if you have a brokerage account, I'm talking about your cash account, as referred to in our industry. So you have your retirement accounts and your cash account, okay? And then the next step is your estate plan.
Absolutely.
So you do all these things and you're wealthy. You have a corporation. You have an estate plan and you want to pass these assets on to your beneficiaries. That's your legacy. That's all about love. It's all about having a proper plan to do that. And then the last step is your review process. So you got this book. You look at the book. Those are the subsections of the book. And when you have a review, you go to your financial advisor, whoever it is, you bring the book in and you sit down. Actually, you should probably, the night before you go to see the financial advisor, go through the book and put some sticky notes on every page, any questions and things that you want to talk about. Okay? So again, just look at your investment plan itself. Focus on the investment plan for a minute and say, this is my investment portfolio. This is what it looks like. Here's my statement. It's with Scotia McLeod or Scotia Wealth Management, I should say, or it's with BMO or it's with TD. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. You look at that statement and you got maybe 15 different investments on that statement. How and why were each of those investments selected? What is the expected rate of return on that investment? What is the risk standard deviation measurement on that particular investment? Is it too high? Is it not high enough? Okay. You need to evaluate that because you need to know whether that investment is going to generate the rate of return you need to accomplish your objectives. That has to be analyzed. So there is a process, a crystal clear process for doing that. So that's your financial plan. That's what it looks like. And it's a process. So do you have such a document? If you don't, maybe it's time to get one. Best way to get one, call Frida. Area code 604-737-3512. If you got a question or a comment, we have in our remaining moments, we'll be happy to take your call. Give us a call. So you talk directly to clients? You have your own clients?
No, actually, I actually work only with the advisors at Scotia Wealth Management with their clientele. So if you will, I'm the specialist. I come in, review the overall planning and plan that's in place, and then make recommendations that are consistent with what the clients want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. So my raison d'etre, my reason for being, is to teach people what they need to know to make better financial decisions. And the best decision that you can possibly make. I hate beating this one to death, but the best decision you can possibly make is to get yourself a well-written financial plan. Update it annually. Regularly get an investment analysis of your investment portfolio. That's really part of the plan, but I focus on that so I have that clear focus, because I see portfolios all the time. They're too risky. They're not risky enough. The expected rate of return is not going to accomplish what they're designed to do. If the expected return needed is 10% and your portfolio is generating 2%, you're obviously going to fail in your financial objective.
Indeed. And you know, it's important to note, because we've talked about the planning process today, is that Fred, being a fantastic generalist, and of course, as he mentioned earlier, knows a lot about these subjects, he also has a team of specialists, myself being one of them,
Yes.
being an estate planning specialist, but there are planning specialists, there are legal specialists, tax specialists, and we all stand behind Fred, helping him deliver the service, the high-quality service he delivers.
I'm like the orchestra leader.
Indeed.
You're the orchestra. Okay? So, again, what ties it all together is the financial plan. God, I'm beating that one to death, am I not?
It's so true.
But I can't understand, Anthony, why we don't have a lineup of people at our door right now demanding a written financial plan. There's no cost. It doesn't cost you $3,000 or $4,000. I do know firms in town that will charge you $3,000 or $4,000 for a written financial plan. That's what it's worth. But they're easy to generate these days with the financial software that's out there. I have a couple here on my screen, if you can see that, a couple sitting on the beach. If I click on that, that will open a piece of software that will actually crunch all the numbers for a financial plan. Lays it all out.
However, it's important to note that when we're talking about financial planning, there are many, many people, of course, who do have financial plans in place and do very well by going through the planning process on an ongoing basis. However, as I mentioned earlier, I think for those that don't, it comes back to that mental blind spot, that scotoma, the psychologists call them, and they just have that difficulty in getting the ball rolling, that static point, if you will. And I've always found once somebody pushes past that static point, they are so happy that they did, because they feel that sense of control we've talked about, which is direct and proportionate to a sense of happiness in their lives.
Out of control is sadness. In control is happiness. I leave you with that thought, and we have to go. Same time, same station next week. Bye for now.
If you'd like Fred to review your portfolio, call his office right now at 604-737-3512. That's 604-737-3512.